So, why do we need alternatives to the bench press, the deadlift and the squat? These are the big three lifts, the three that everybody swears by, and they've been shown to build max strength performance. What could possibly be wrong with them? Well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I'm not saying that they're not useful and functional. I'm just saying they're not the be-all and end-all, and there are some reasons you might need some alternatives at times. Firstly, the big three lifts are not easy to perform from home. If you don't have enough space for a large barbell on your carpet, if you don't have enough money to invest in weights, and if you don't have a power rack, all of this is going to make it very difficult to train from home. As the pandemic showed us, being able to train from home or from anywhere else is a really useful tool to have in your arsenal. It ensures that you can continue training even in the face of difficulties. Conversely, the exercises I'm about to show you are easy to perform anywhere with equipment that's relatively affordable and portable. So this is something you can do from home or somewhere like this. At the same time, those big three lifts, although useful, they don't cover every aspect of human performance, as some people would have you believe. Some people say that just training these big three lifts will build strength, and that strength will transfer to athletic performance across the board. Unfortunately, I don't agree, and as I'm going to demonstrate, these alternatives and variations can plug gaps that might be missing if you only use those big three lifts. Finally, some people just don't like those big three lifts, and that's absolutely fine. If you find that your limb lengths make squatting difficult, if you find that you hurt your back when you deadlift, if you just don't feel drawn to these exercises, you don't have to do them. There's no requirement to perform any single exercise. There's always good alternatives, and that's what I'm going to hopefully show you now. Just to be clear, I'm looking for exercises that offer similar functional benefits to the big three. So I'm not really interested in aesthetics or improving your numbers on those lifts. We're looking for exercises that will transfer to better performance in sports and in life, despite not using the same huge amounts of weight. With that in mind, we're going to be starting out with an alternative to the bench press, that being either the band press or the cable press. We can do this with one arm or with two arms. Unfortunately, I actually forgot the bands I would normally use for this exercise. The good news is I do always carry a band in my pocket. It's just a little bit lighter and doesn't quite fit in the same way, so just imagine this with better bands. All you're going to do is you're going to stand by the band. You're going to have it at about pec height, the same as you'd use for a bench press. You're going to take up a staggered stance, so the back leg should be on that side. Then just going to push through like so. When we perform a one-armed band press like this has the added benefit of including anti-rotation, because we're trying to avoid our torso from twisting back with the band or the cable. But guys, if you are going to train outside, as I recommend, then it's important that you find a way to look after your skin. This is something I found out the hard way lately, as I've noticed little sunspots and thin lines appearing. Unfortunately, I'm just not the sort of person who has a lot of interest and time to look into different skincare routines. That's why I'm excited about today's sponsor, Tiege Hanley, which is a company that simplifies the process of keeping your skin looking great. So they'll send you a subscription box containing all the different products you need to look as young as you feel, or ideally much younger. They also include an instruction leaflet that lets you know exactly when to use each one, and that's the bit I really like because it's uncomplicated. You just put on the thing that it says when it says, and then you know your skin's protected. I'm okay with looking like a kind of grizzled Clint Eastwood type, but maybe not before I'm even 40, and also I think my wife might have some things to say about that too. I recommend that you start with their level 1 system, which comes with all the basics. So that's a daily face wash to get rid of the dirt and grime on your skin, 2 times per week exfoliating scrub to get rid of dead skin cells, an evening moisturizer to help your skin stay hydrated and healthy throughout the night, and the bit that I'm really interested in, the morning moisturizer with SPF 20, which will protect you from the sun throughout the day. You don't have to remember to put on sun cream, which frankly I hate doing. It feels good. Obviously it's early days, but I think I'm looking a little bit fresher, and they have over 5,000 positive customer reviews, so they must be doing something right. And members of Tiege Hanley will also get loads of benefits, such as 20% off the retail price, the ability to customize their box, exclusive monthly deals, they can pause or cancel at any time, and there's free US shipping and low-cost shipping to most other countries. And because Tiege Hanley is sponsoring today's video, they're also offering my viewers a really great deal. Just click the first link in the description and you'll get 30% off your first box, plus a free gift, which is an amazing deal. So click that link and get started today. Now I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking that the band press looks naff. It's so much lighter than a heavy bench press. How can it possibly offer any of the same benefits? Well, the truth is, in many ways, the band press is actually more functional and more useful than the bench press if you're interested in athletic performance. The reason for this is that the bench press involves lying down flat, tucking yourself under a really heavy weight, and then pressing it. There's no core stabilization involved. However, if you try and push that same weight standing up, what's going to happen? You're going to fly backwards. You simply can't offer that much opposite force when pushing something in the real world. If you're standing up, however, you're using all those muscles together. You're engaging the core and you're building your shoulders and your pecs and your triceps from that position as you really would. You might not get as strong, but you're going to build as much strength as you can actually use from a standing position, which is what you need whether you're doing martial arts or sports or anything else. This is a much more natural and normal movement pattern. When you perform a bench press, you're actually supposed to bring the shoulder blades back, retract the scapula as though you're trying to pinch a coin between them. You're supposed to depress the shoulders at the same time and then push like this. This helps create a stable foundation on the bench. Gives you a wider surface area. It also helps you to engage the right muscles, protect the shoulders, etc. But it's not how you'd push in real life. Can you imagine pushing something outwards whilst at the same time retracting your shoulder blades? It's not a natural movement pattern. A great variation of that movement is the cable or band punch out. You're going to perform the movement more like a punch, which will include rotation at the hips and at the core. And next up is the squat. And the squat is another movement that typically requires an awful lot of weight. However, the benefit, the functional usefulness of this weight is once again questionable. When would you ever find yourself in a situation where you'd put that much weight on your shoulders and then squat all the way down? The fact that you need a power rack to get into this position tells you that you simply can't get that much weight onto your shoulders to begin with unless you happen to be squatting. Now, someone in the comments once mentioned to me that at work they sometimes have to tuck themselves under something very heavy to move it, but even then they're not going to then squat all the way down to the ground and squat all the way back up again. Again, this isn't to say that this isn't a useful movement. It's an extremely useful movement. It's been shown to massively increase jump height and running speed. However, it's not the only way to build this. It's not 100% essential, and if you have a client or if you yourself don't enjoy squats that much, or if you want to train in a different way from home perhaps, there are alternatives that in some ways are just as beneficial. Specifically, this time I'm talking about the front squat. That could be a goblet squat, it could be a barbell front squat. All you're going to do is you're going to take the weight, you're going to hold it in front of you instead of on your shoulders, and from there you're just going to squat as you normally would. Not only does this include a slightly lower injury risk, because the front weight actually acts as a counterbalance, it helps you to keep your back straight, it works on ankle mobility, but at the same time it also more closely mimics the way you would squat something in the real world, because that's how you pick stuff up. You don't tend to squat with things on your shoulders. It's fantastic for anti-flexion because you need to keep your core straight, so it builds an iron core just in a different way, and it'll let you use a heavier weight without necessarily having a power rack. Or you can use something like this, the goblet squat, for a lighter load and perform higher repetitions, which will train more of your strength endurance rather than your pure max strength. As I've discussed on this channel before, I believe that strength endurance is often more beneficial than max strength because we very rarely have to exert our maximum force for one repetition. More often we need to exert our submaximal force for lots of repetitions, whether you're carrying something, whether you're pushing something, whether you're playing a sport. For me, the real functional benefit, what really makes the squat interesting, is the way it improves jump height and running speed. And we can emulate this by performing a jump squat or a kettlebell jump squat. Hold the weight in front of you, squat up from the ground and launch yourself into the air as far as you can. The great thing about this is that the optimal amount of weight to use is 30% of your body weight, because this offers enough resistance to provide a challenge and a stimulus, but without slowing down the movement into a kind of grind. Still allows you to exert speed and force and explosive power, which translates to greater jump height and running speed. Go any heavier, you're going to see diminishing returns. Ultimately, this is the said principle at its best. If you want to get better at jumping, then jump. Not enough people jump during their training. At the same time, you now have that anti-flexion for the core, but it's even better because you're extending, you're bringing yourself upwards with that triple extension as you leap into the air. You're adding resistance not only to the legs, but to the core in this manner, which will allow you to exert even more power when you leap directly upwards. And what I really like to do here is to perform as many of these as I can, then throw the kettlebell to one side and continue without any additional weight. What we're working with here is something called compensatory acceleration. That means that we're using acceleration in the place of pure resistance. As far as our nervous system is concerned, force is force. Generating power is the same whether it's weight, whether it's speed. Obviously, you make sure you're landing gently on your knees. Don't add weight until you're comfortable with your jumping and your landing. Stop once you start to get fatigued because there's a higher risk of injury at this point. And finally, the deadlift, which is a truly useful move. Again, don't get me wrong, it teaches the hip hinge, which is game-changing for preventing injury. It builds a huge amount of strength. You can lift such a lot of weight this way, and it's a movement pattern that you might actually use in the real world because you might want to lift something heavy off the floor or just tilt up a piece of furniture to get something from underneath. It translates to a greater jump height, builds grip strength, it strengthens and stretches the hamstrings, builds mobility. It's just truly a fantastic movement. However, you don't necessarily have to be doing it once you know what goals you're after, and at the same time, it doesn't provide everything you need all in one package, as we're about to see. Again, if you're interested in jumping height and that kind of performance, then a kettlebell swing is going to offer you just the same thing. This strengthens the lower back. Once again, it teaches the hip hinge. Kettlebell swings are sometimes said to have the what the hell effect. Basically, they provide such impressive performance when it comes to running, jumping, etc. that it makes people say, what the hell? If it's greater mobility and flexibility that you're interested in, then you can do this with a Romanian deadlift using a lighter weight. And that's the thing, if you want to prevent back injuries, you don't need a huge amount of weight. If you're injuring yourself picking up a sock off the floor, strength isn't the issue. There's no point at which a really light sock is going to cause you to tear a muscle. And even if you are saying that it's a compounding effect on top of a busy, hectic day, that one sock is no way the straw that broke the camel's back. So the issue here is the movement pattern. The issue is deactivated muscles. The issue is mobility, and something like the Romanian deadlift can build all that just nicely. For even better results, you can do the one-legged Romanian deadlift, which also builds a huge amount of hip stability, and of course it lets you use a lighter weight whilst experiencing a greater relative load. And finally, there's also the fact that in real life, you don't pick up a straight bar off the ground that's extremely heavy for one repetition. It just doesn't work like that. More often you're using an awkward angle because you have to pick something all the way off the floor. There's no lift, so you're going to have to round your back a little bit. You might have to twist a little bit. You might be doing it quickly. You might be doing it with a staggered stance. So the best thing you can do here is to train with those different variables. You can use a rotational deadlift where you're lifting something off the ground and turning. And a great real world equivalent to this is to move a pile of rocks from one side of you to another. This builds strength endurance and that twisting and bending motion. Or you can use one of my favourite exercises, the kettlebell clean and press, where you pick a kettlebell up off the floor on one side of you, bring it up to the clean position and then press it over your head. This is fantastic because it works nearly every muscle, but it also has that nice twisting and bending and hinging combination that we were just talking about. And then there's the staggered stance deadlift where you can stagger your stance and pick something up off the ground like that. Or you can just try picking up unusual objects, whether that's a sandbag, whether that's a heavy log or a branch or a rock. I like to think of these things as taking your exercise and then testing it in the real world. You hone and refine your technique in the gym, then you take it out in the real world and see how it actually holds up. Using lighter weights, of course, but building more robust movement patterns and preparing yourself for the real world where things aren't straight lines and flat surfaces. Also, it's not a replacement for a specific one of these lifts, but some kind of carry or farmer's walk is a very useful addition as well, because in reality, if you're lifting that much weight, chances are you're going to be walking with it. So thanks a ton for watching, you guys. I hope you found this video useful and interesting. If you did, then please consider leaving a like and sharing it around. That helps me out so much more than you know, and I really appreciate it. If you enjoy this kind of training that looks at functional performance, that's running speed, jump height, injury prevention, even focus and brain power, then you might enjoy my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0, which now comes with over 2 hours of video tutorials. That program includes these movements as well as many others like it, and variations that require no equipment whatsoever. Either way, thank you so much for watching this one, guys. I appreciate it massively, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.